Hi, good evening everybody. Tonight's tutorial is a memory cushion, so this can obviously take varying forms. I'm using my little boy's baby clothes and some of the ones he's most recently had. So they range from sizes from baby girls, I think first size baby girls are tiny, to t-shirts that are 2 to 3 years old. So they are all fairly small items. Give me a wave or say hi if you can see me, and then I know there's people there, and I'll get started. So this project really can use any materials that you want. You could just use standard craft cottons and just make a patchwork cushion, so obviously get you the idea. Thank you, Jan, hi! Just to give you the feel of going through the motions of creating a cushion, a patchwork design, sorry, or you could obviously start off with some more precious items. I've got a whole range of Oliver's things. Hi everybody, thank you for just letting me know you're there. And I've got some ones that I really loved, and then some ones, the most recent ones I've got fondest memories of. Obviously I've done this before, so before I would chop up your most precious things, if you've not got lots of them, I would go with something old, like a dodgy t-shirt or something they've stained. So the cushion is ideal for the standard 17-inch cushion pad. So the finished piece we'll make tonight for the front will be 45 centimetres squared. So I'm going to use a cushion that takes 9 squares that are 16 centimetres, and I'll pop this on this Facebook page once I've gone off live. But you could also make a cushion that contains 16 squares and there will be 12 centimetres. So this one is 16 centimetres. I'm going to use 9 in total. So 3 rows of 3, a bit like noughts and crosses. So obviously, like I said, I've gone from first size baby girls to, hello Sophia! From first size baby girls to 2 to 3. Obviously, if you are doing school uniform or nursery uniforms or brownies or rainbows or whatever your children might be growing up into, it's an amazing time. Obviously, we've just started this summer holidays, although it doesn't really feel like the same sort of leaving, or high school, or obviously it could be the memories from a loved one. There is obviously lots of multiple different uses for this cushion, so it depends what size you've got. Now the one thing I'm a little bit annoyed with myself is that I forgot the interfacing. So particularly if you're using school uniform and you've got knitted jumpers, some fusible interfacing would be amazing, just to give your fabrics a support. I'm using baby girls, so they are all knitted. I think there's one cotton item I've used, so they're all stretchy. So interfacing just goes on the back and acts as a little bit of a support to make it a bit more sturdy. So if you're struggling and they're flimsy or they're moving and you find you're not getting 90-degree angles, then a little bit of fusible interfacing on the back will work wonders. Obviously these were stretch items that I'm using. Oliver did stretch them to get them on, but that stretch isn't needed anymore for the cushion. So equipment can be just as simple as you like. It could be a piece of cereal box card. So I've got a 16 centimetre cardboard template there. There's sort of pros and cons to using that. Obviously it's absolutely fine if that's what you've got. I'm going to be using a square that I've cut from a plastic popper button wallet, because I can see through it, so it means that I can see the part of the design I'm picking, and I'm also going to show you some tips and tricks using the rotary cutter and a quilting ruler, which is my personal favourite. But like I said, if you don't have that, you don't need it. It can be as simple as a little bit of cardboard. So I've got a few items. Some are quite simple. I've prepped a few, so it means I can spend more time waffling, which is like my favourite activity of all, and just talking to you about how you can adapt different things. And I've got some basic ones as well. So if you have got an item, and if you are doing this with children and they have big slops down the front, I hope you can see those of Oliver's, it looks like chocolate sauce or something like that, then don't forget that you can use the back. So just because you tend to have a design or logo at the front, don't forget, if you love that fabric and you really remember your child in that, or it's the colours of the school uniform or the PE kit, but they've got a big stain down it, there's always the back of the item. So garments like this that I've chopped up are going to go straight in my poof that's still not quite full. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do this little sweatshirt for Oliver. It's quite bulky, obviously it's a sweater. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just dismantle my garment. Now I've got some really itty bitty ones. What size is this? 6 to 9 months. So if you're finding that your template, if you've got really small ones, isn't fitting on this, then what you can do is sort of dissect your garment to make it easier. So I'll tilt the camera and I'm hoping you'll be able to see. Oh yes. So I've got a thick item like this. So rather than battling through this and all the layers and seams, I'm just going to chop into it to make it a little bit easier and usable. This one obviously hasn't got a particular design or a pocket, but I will show you some more kind of intricate ones, I suppose. And I'm just chopping around the seams. Like that, and cut that bottom band off, because I think that'll be a bit too chunky to go in my patchwork. So, first thing to do is if you've got this template, then it means what you can do is sort of manoeuvre it around and position. So there's lots of dinosaurs on mine, and depending on which one I would like in the middle of my square, it means I can just negotiate it a little bit. And I quite like this one here. So I'm going to use my trick marker or air erasable pen, and I'm just going to draw around that template and just give me a rough idea of the square I'm using. Now, if you've got a smaller item, if it's a very small baby clothes, or quite often breast logos, you have to negotiate around. It doesn't matter if you go into the side seam of your garment or the sleeve seam. Remember, obviously, it has come from a garment, so it's quite nice to show some seams or patches or buttons and things like that. So I'm just going to, again, loosely cut out my square. So I'm not following my lines just at the moment. Just going to make that a little bit darker. And then you can see it on camera. So that's my square so far. So it's meant that I can get that one more or less in the middle. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use my rotary cutter. But if you didn't have one, scissors are absolutely perfectly fine for this. But I can't, I'm not the best for cutting straight, I'll be honest. So all I'm going to do is just keep on moving my square and keeping it at a 90-degree angle. This is my neatest work here, I'm going to be honest. I don't think that's straight, still want to straighten that one there. I'm going to work with that angle, I think. Yeah, that's better. I'll just keep on rotating that. So I'm going to use the lines on my grid to make sure I'm getting my 16cm square. So I've lined this edge up with my 10 and I'm going to work with my 26 to make sure I get that perfect size square. I'm just using my rotary cutter and my cutting mat. So the grid's on my cutting mat to make sure that I get nice, neat 90-degree angles. So it all starts off at least nice and straight. Like that. So that's one square. So fairly straightforward one to start off with. Now, if you've got more complicated bits, so I quite like this Thomas t-shirt where it's got this little pocket on. Like I said, my square is probably going to go into my sleeve seam here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop down here where I'm probably not going to go into and just open it out to give me a little bit more scope, and down my shoulder seam and just down into the arm. So that I can open this up like that. So you can see now I'm kind of buying myself a little bit more space to pop this in. So to me, it doesn't matter that I've got this seam joined in here. Everybody's different. Some people will like it so that it's really Trick marker, depending on what fabric you're using it on, Carol, will disappear within a couple of hours, a few minutes, but the longest it should last is 72 hours. Each brand's different. This is a Prim one and they tend to last a little bit longer. Some of them come off really quickly, and if you've got synthetic fibres, it tends to wear off a little bit quicker, but each fabric's slightly different. And if it starts to fade away as you're doing them, I like to tend to draw my square and then cut them out. But if you're doing it, kind of drawing them all, if you just give it a little press with your iron, it will just strengthen that mark. So I'm going to get one cut. And then I can start rotating my top again using that 90-degree angle and sort of loosely following those lines. So I think having that little bit of texture, them a little bit more interactive, makes them a little bit more exciting, especially if they're for children. But I know some of them will be kind of more keepsake and not necessarily something that you let your children play with. So I've got a pocket on a dungaree that I want to show you, and I've got a couple of ideas for that of how you could utilise that. But could be a nice idea for sort of a pocket maybe for the tooth fairy, if you let your little ones sort of have it on the bed, or maybe even for those sort of special occasions. So I've managed to capture the design I wanted. Like I said, albeit I've got a seam down here, but I think it's quite nice because obviously then it makes it more authentic to the fact that it was a little top for Oliver. So this is the one that I wanted to show you. Sorry that you're not seeing my face very much at the moment. So I've got some dungarees. I loved both of my babies in dungarees. So there's a couple of elements that I like. There's the pocket, which I think could be quite cute and quite interactive. So the only thing about having a transparent template is you tend to lose it. So one idea I have is to use this bit and to have the actual pocket itself on one of the cushions. So I'm going to draw around that now. And my second idea is to actually use the dungaree elements or the straps at the top. And I'll show you about doing that now. I won't be able to pick both of them for my cushion, but it gives you kind of an idea if you liked your little ones in dungarees, or they had a pinafore or something like that for the nursery uniform or the school uniform. I'm using obviously quite small squares, but you could, if you had bigger items, you could make a cushion just with 4. I'm just going to cut this one out with my scissors so that I don't damage too much what I want to show you up here. So you could do a cushion with maybe just 4 squares if you're a little bit limited to uniform, or the pieces needed to be that bit bigger because the design's that bit bigger. Obviously, as kids' t-shirts get bigger, the designs on the front tend to get bigger. So that is my little cushion, obviously with a little pocket. So when I take the seam allowance, it'll probably take a little bit of this off, but obviously it'll still leave a functional pocket. And my second idea is I've used a little bit of another Baby Grow. It's a fairly boring jumper. And I've got the top of my dungarees, and I like the idea of tacking this down here at the bottom and then bringing the straps up from the top, so you get that dungaree kind of idea like that, so that if I cut it off there, you'd get kind of a little interactive popper that you could use, and you get the idea of the dungarees on there. So what I'll do is I'm just going to pin this into place, and then I'll decide which I think maybe works best in the cushion. Doesn't look particularly level, doesn't that? I'm just going to... I just really can't, I'm just so not good at doing things straight. But this is, I suppose, the nice thing about this is that it doesn't have to be ridiculously straight. Like that. Pop a couple of pins for the straps. I'm trying to keep my eyes on the questions, so hopefully you could use a collar. Yes, Becky, you could use a collar, and I will show you now one I've just prepped earlier. In fact, I started prepping it when I started making a memory quilt for Oliver a couple of years ago that never quite got finished. So it'll be quite nice just to show you that in a minute. So that is my other option on the square, so it really does look like the dungaree element there, and obviously still could be popped and unpopped. So pop that to one side. See my face again for a minute. So I've prepped some strips, like I said, so I could show you how I could faff. So this was the collar from like a little pyjama top or a little pyjama suit, I think it was, where I've used the collar, and all I've done is I've tacked back the collar and just follow the top stitching on the collar and on the neckline, so obviously you don't have a sort of gaping hole there, but you can use all sorts of different elements. So there's quite a lot of layers of fabric in there, but all I've done is just a little bit like how I split the t-shirts open. In fact, I'll try and show you on here. I'll go up the side seams of this because this is a little polo shirt. You just need to be careful when you're doing this because there's quite a lot of layers to go through. It's can be quite thick, so you just need to be careful with your fingers. So obviously, if I used that, I'd have that hole. So all I've done, I'll just tilt you again, is I've opened up my collar, popped it like that, and then I've just brought the back of the garment and I've just sort of folded it back on itself so that it fills this void there. And all I did just now, before I came live, is I sewed along my shoulder seam, I followed my top stitching of my collar and the top stitching of the back of the collar and there, and again along that sort of shoulder seam, so it tacked it down, and then I've cut it into a square. So definitely you could use a collar, especially if you've got men's shirts. Obviously men's shirts are bigger, so they would make quite a nice full cushion pad, but you'd still use that sort of same principle to get your front piece. So just bringing the back bit down and pulling the collar up, and just a bit of extra top stitching, but a really nice effect. So I've started to piece my cushions together. So I'm using half a centimetre or 1/4 inch seams, which are standard patchworking seams. And like with patchworking, I'm not using securing stitches at the beginning and the end of my seams. So I've got 3 rows there. I've done 6 altogether, like I said, just so I could waffle a bit more and talk to you about the dungarees and things like that. So I've started to think about how my cushion might go together. And then I've got these options here, so I thought I'd just see what colours went, as to see where I thought these could go, because it's a bit grey heavy, I think. Could have my little dungarees. You can quite see it all. So you'd follow the same sort of principles if you were doing a quilt or something like that. It doesn't have to just be oh, there is so much grey. Maybe I could put that there. Grey overload. It's definitely a boy. So lots of dinosaurs. My dinosaurs are all down the middle now. Gosh, I think it's like life-changing decisions. Oh well, I think that balance works quite nicely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these 2 strips to one side, and I'm going to place the right sides together of my squares. So I'm just going to do 1 strip at a time. Just put a couple of pins in to keep it in place. And it is only a fine seam allowance, so just make sure it doesn't move, because if one of the layers moves, you've not got much there. You might just get a little hole if you're not quite careful enough. So I've got that there like that. And then this seam here on the other side. So the key is, if you've got, obviously if you're working with garments and they've got different stretch, some of them aren't stretchy, some of them slightly distort out of place. If you always match the ends and then sort of stretch to fit in the middle, because especially if you've got little things and you're trying to negotiate around logos and badges, you might just find that some of the squares are just a fraction smaller. So always level the top and the bottom and then stretch out in between to make it fit, rather than having a kind of a gap at one side. So I'm using nice, simple straight stitches, 1/2 centimetre seam allowance. And like I said, I'm not doing any securing stitches. If you've chosen to interface your pieces, you'll find that it's probably a lot easier to handle your fabrics if you've got stretchy fabrics and slippy fabrics and things like that. But if not, just take it nice and slow. So the reason you tend not to use securing stitches with patchwork is because the seams that the ends of the seams that we've just done now are going to be trapped in the next seams. So you tend never to do securing stitches on patchwork projects, and it's just one of those things. So the bottom of this now will now be trapped into the next thing I do. So what I'm going to do is, because things have slightly moved, and they will do, I'm just going to again level that up with my rotary cutter. So I've got a really stretchy fabric on here and then not so stretchy fabrics on the rest of it. So my Thomas one has slightly moved, and I'm just going to level that up now and just take a little bit off so that bottom line is nice and level. And just fractional bits like that, but it'll just make it a little bit smoother. And then the same at the top. I'm just making sure I'm not taking too much off and making my squares any smaller really than they want to be. So now the next thing I need to do is decide where they go. And you think it's like a multi-million-pound decision, this. So I might still have a little, I think no matter how I'm going to do this, I'm always going to end up with I'm going to end up with my dinos down the middle. So this bit's really important now, just for getting these points matching. So what I'm going to do is just lay down, in fact, I've pressed those seams, I've not pressed the ones on this one. I'll show you a little bit of pressing. So I'm getting excited. Getting too excited for the final result and not showing you everything. So with patchworking, rather than splitting your seams and pressing them open, you tend to press to the dark side, which means you push towards the darker fabric. So in this case, where I've got the light grey and the navy, I'm going to push towards the navy. And that is just so if you've got a lighter fabric, the seam allowances don't show through that fabric. And then with my Thomas fabric, I'm probably going to push towards the grey, because I think that's probably is a little bit darker. Now, if you can't decide which one's the darker one, then obviously it doesn't matter too much. It shouldn't make a difference of seeing the seams. And then I'm just going to give them a little press on the front and make sure they're nice and smooth. They're pretty good, actually. So I'm going to lay this seam on top of here, and I'm going to match my seams up first. That's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm kind of lifting up this fabric here and really cautiously laying it back down. Like I said, because that's the bit that you want to try and get matched as well as possible. My mum is amazing at patchwork and is absolutely unbelievable at seam matching. Definitely can't profess to be as neat as she is. And then I'm going to match the ends up. So I've got a stable fabric, this is cotton, and then a very stretchy fabric here. So I'm going to put a few extra pins in there just to make sure that that Thomas t-shirt doesn't manoeuvre where I don't want it to. And again, with it all only being a small seam allowance, I don't want any layers to come undone. Now, things to avoid sewing near, and the reason I'm saying this now is because I've got a pop stud. You can't sew over pop studs. You can attempt it, but it's not going to end well. And buttons. So like on my little polo shirt here, what I'd probably advise doing is actually unpicking your buttons off, possibly even top stitching the button band down, and then once you've finished your cushion cover, then sewing them back on. So if your machine catches that, it's not going to be a happy camper, and there's a high chance of a little injury there as well, certainly a snap needle. So just make sure you take things like that into consideration, especially baby girls, because obviously they're littered with pop studs. We really need to kind of negotiate around those. It doesn't mean that you can't sew the front with the lovely poppers all the way down the front, but just think about where they're going to lie, not on your seam allowance. So I'll get that sewn into place. Is there any questions? It's just a normal needle. Although I'm using stretchy fabrics, obviously, like anything you're doing, if you want to do a little test square first, if your machine sewing stretchy fabric looked like it was skipping stitches, then I would advise switching to a ballpoint or a jersey needle, but mine are fine for this. And although it's a stretchy fabric, I'm not using a stretchy stitch because the end function isn't going to be stretched. This is where my machine's going through the dungaree strap, so it does sound a bit clunky, and it's because it is so chunky. So I'll whip those pins out. We'll have a look what that's looking like, and then we also want to press that seam as well. Now, it'll be hard to necessarily pick a dark or a light side just because of the mixture of fabrics now. So I've got my first 2 rows. Look, if you can see, I'm quite happy with those joins there. And I've got all my dungaree bits, all my fiddly bits in now. My pocket, my collar on my pyjamas shirt. I'll just do the pop stud on that. Get it all looking nice. And then I'm going to put my 3rd and final row in here. The dinosaurs go both ways on that. That was throwing me. So again, I'm just going to match my seams as best I can. Oh, sorry, when I film on Facebook Live, my camera looks in reverse to you, so this machine's a standard machine, but just the way I'm filming it means it's back to front, so I do apologise for that if you've not watched one of my lives before. When I get around to popping them all, doing some official ones on YouTube, I shall make sure that they're all kind of front on, but it makes it easy for live to do them like this, which I know is a bit confusing. And I'm going to sew that. The reason I didn't interface my jersey was because, I'll be honest, I didn't have any. I thought I'd got buckets of stuff at home, and I haven't. Although it's all right, if it's the first time you're doing something, it's definitely a good idea just to give it a bit more support, but I didn't have any. So that is my honest opinion. There's no technical reason why not to use interfacing, I just didn't have any. One side, turn that off. They can all see me again. So, yeah, I always say this when we're doing the big memory bear workshop. There's lots and lots of pieces to it, and you've got stretchy fabric. You can obviously interface them all, or you can leave them all soft and stretchy and pliable. It depends what feel you would like on the end result on your bear. So, this is my patches, so I'm quite happy with that. It's quite tactile. I'm just going to give it a little press. Again, I'm going to press the seams, and then I'm just going to give you some information about the backing, and then give you the date for I'm going to be doing a very mini memory bear on one of the lives. So just an opportunity to either keep some of the items you've maybe not included in your cushion, or maybe some of the backs of things, or another opportunity just to find some more bits and bobs you might have lurking in the attic. I'll give it one more final press. I think overall I've got one corner that's not quite matched up, where I have quite a bulky bit, but I'm pretty happy with that. Very cute, and definitely reminds me of my owl. So that is my patchwork front. Obviously I'd prepped 2 rows to make things speedier for you guys to see it come together, but one of the nicest things about doing this is sort of playing Tetris really with your squares to match things. Obviously it's deeply affected my OCD having 3 rows of dinosaurs, but I will have to get over that, and just obviously messing around and thinking where you like things. So obviously you can have all kinds of different bits and bobs, from dungarees to collars and pockets, etc. Obviously there's quite a lot of this that's fairly flat, so if you've got items like little baby socks, or if you're doing one for school uniform and you've got a school tie and things like that, well obviously there's nothing to stop you popping those over the top of that now. It can be anything from little dribble babes, obviously like Oliver's got this cloud attached to his Thomas things, it might be small toys or bits that are kind of hanging off your dungarees, your clothes. I could even, if I wanted to, unpick that pocket and maybe sort of like offset it and top stitch it over there. So it doesn't mean that just when you get to this stage it all has to be over. In fact, I probably quite like the idea, I have to say, of maybe just putting the pocket shape on my cushion and having another tactile element to it. So let me just find the date for the mini memory bear so you can get delving in the attics or your garages. 16th of September I've popped that down for. I've got a little schedule. Next week we're doing glasses or sunglasses case. Rather optimistically sunglasses, but we shall see what the weather is like. And then these will continue on into August and September. And then we're going to be thinking about Christmas, which is crazy. I hope you've enjoyed that. Please, as always, tag me in your pictures, put them onto the sharing group, and I will pop the dimensions on our main Facebook page for the dimensions of how to make a 9 square cushion front and also how to make a 16 one. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope there's been some helpful tips, and I shall see you next Wednesday. Bye-bye.